Thanks, Audrey, and thanks, NCURA, for this spotlight. I really do appreciate the time to come and speak with you all about my leadership journey. Titled it Private Sector as a Director. You got to make it snazzy to get people in. So it really talks about how I got into the profession, some stumbles I had along the way, and things that I learned throughout the journey that hopefully you guys will find helpful. Like I said, we'll have Q&A at the end to ask some additional questions. We did have some questions come in the beginning, so I do appreciate. I'll answer those as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So who am I? So my name is Brian Miller, as already previously announced. I am the Director of Post-Award Operations at Emory University. So what does that entail? So we're really in charge of invoicing, submission of financial reports, audit. So we're kind of more known as the central office. So that's kind of what it is that I do. I'm in charge of a team of roughly 20. I have 2 ADs, 4 managers, and a great team that I'm very proud of. I'm also an NCURA member since 2017. Last year I rolled off, but I was the NCURA Collaborate National Chair. I was also a member of the Professional Development Committee. And I've been in research administration for over a decade. It's getting close to say 2 decades, but not quite there yet. I'm also a certified research administrator. And I'm like most of you all here likely, started your journey as an entry-level research administrator. So I didn't come in at a high level. I didn't just start as, a manager or director. I started at the bottom and kind of moved my way up. So let's get into kind of talking about that. But before we do, I have to take my time to plug Collaborate. So if you guys are not members of Collaborate, definitely do that. It is a platform within NCURA that allows you to kind of professionally network, join different areas, a pre-post award. It is more of a global community now. So it's really great. I won't plug all things here, but definitely do, check out Collaborate if you haven't already, sign up. It's definitely a great resource. But my career timeline. So where did I start? I started in the private sector as an executive administrator, whatever that's called. Kind of, I don't want to say it was a made up title at the time, but we'll get into that as we kind of talk about that. From there, I moved to the University of Florida, where I started as an entry level research administrator. And then from there, I went on to become a senior, a co-lead, transitioned my career to Emory University, where I currently still am. Back to being a manager there. We'll talk about that a little bit later, where I kind of took a demotion to kind of move and transition. Associate director, I was interim executive director, which was acting associate vice president for 10 months. And then I became the director of post-award operations, where I currently am at. So we'll kind of go through parts 1 through 5. So my early career, I came straight out of college. And for those of you who were around remember that time, it was what they called, I had to look this up, they called it the Great Recession. But that's when I was looking at getting into starting a career. So as you can kind of see the graph, that's where I am. And unfortunately, you say, well, graph going up's good, but in this case, graph going up is bad because that's unemployment. So you can see for people my age, it was pretty steady up to that point, but obviously unemployment boomed during that time. So it was hard to find work. I saw a lot of solicitations for like credit card agencies, cold calling type stuff, which I really hated. I really didn't want to do those types of things. So I actually ended up moving from New Hampshire to Florida, where I fell into, and I have a nice picture of a house down there that was my old boss's house. He was working on improving his house. So he was looking for people to do that. So I said, hey, and my dad's a contractor. I can probably help you with, doing some door installation, window installation, painting. So I did that. But as that progressed, I found out he was really trying to start a biotech company, really out of his own garage. He had a proprietary machine there, but he didn't have much on the business side. So that's where I came from. I had a bachelor's in business administration. To where he's kind of like, well, what is it that you do? What is it that you're looking for? I said, well, I got a business admin degree. So he said, well, hey, I don't have anyone to really take the admin side of my business. I need someone to kind of help me out and get this moving. So we were really able to get his company out of his garage into, you can see the next picture next to it was a municipal incubator, where he was able to actually have offices and a fully furnished lab or laboratory. So you can see, a lot of other companies started up in that garage mindset. So Well, I think in my early career, what it allowed me to do is kind of have a sense of problem solving, persistence, drive, resilience, because there was no other help out there. It was really kind of I'm on my own. So if I didn't have answers to things, I had to call people. I had to figure out how to get things set up, how to get business licenses, how to get insurance set up, all these different types of things that I wish maybe they do a better job at now. I think they do. They have more of an entrepreneurial class in college, but coming out of business school, it's great. I knew kind of how to run a business, do accounting, but they didn't tell me all of the things that how you have to actually do to start a business. So I had to learn, figure out those things the hard way. So what I learned from entrepreneurial risk is it was really a storm of uncertainty, one that I couldn't palate over time. Money was tight. We ran under what we called survival mode. So for those of you know you don't know what survival mode equals, it means a living wage. It means tell me what your bills are, and that's what you get paid. So it kind of was it was tough to build a career around that. We were building for something better, which was great. But it was a struggle on a daily basis, particularly since I was the finance guy, to see, hey, people are asking, hey, we're going to get paid? Oh, yeah, sure we are. But I'm looking at the books. I don't know if we're going to get paid. So it was tough to balance that so early in my career. But, what it did teach me was a lot of skills for a lot of you who watch Shark Tank. I think most of you probably have. It was a lot like that. So a lot of times we were creating presentations about our company, trying to get funding, creating pitch decks, meeting with VC companies, meeting with the government, trying to get them to fund either projects or take a piece of the business itself. But from that, where I got into research administration, quote unquote, was the SBIR awards. So we said, where can we get more funding? Where can we kind of keep the company and business afloat while we look to kind of get, our footing? So we started to write that, and I did some grant writing on that, and we were able to present that, during the time I left the company. They hadn't got it, but they actually were awarded SBIR after I left. A lot of the stuff that was developed there, so I'm very proud of that. I'm happy that they got that. But from that, I had, who's now my wife, she was a student at the University of Florida. She was saying, hey, I'm, a student assistant there and I'm doing closeouts for them. And it's like, don't you do something with grants? I said, maybe. I mean, I wrote one kind of. So that's where my foray into, post-award research administration from higher ed started, is just that connection and transitioning out to something a bit more secure, working with the university, because obviously they are so large there in Gainesville, Florida. But retrospective, looking back now, I do have appreciation of the institutional resources that are available to me now or at another institution, because I was the jack of all trades, as it says here, master of none. So really, I was HR, I was finance, I was payroll, anything administrative was me. So it was a lot to do. But it did allow me to kind of figure out things, a lot of it which I don't want to go back to doing ever again, like business licenses, taxes, 1099s for any of you who's ever done a small business or dealt with those, they are pain. But it got me, exposed to things like, what is the DUNS number? How do I get into grants.gov? Creating all of these things so we could submit proposals to state and local government. And this picture here is one that I always love. It's one that I've seen at many institutions. We actually had it on our wall when we were physically on location at Emory, it says, hey, sure glad the hole isn't on our end, but we're all in the same boat. So, I think sometimes we always feel like that, but, when you're in a small business, it's kind of like, well, the boat's just sinking and everyone's going down with it. But I do really appreciate looking back on my time now to say, look at all of the resources and experts that I have at my fingertips now at a larger institution, where I don't have to know so much the minute details of every single one of these things. So from my early career in the private sector, there were some lessons that I learned that I want to convey to you all. And that's kind of how I go through these different sections, is kind of let you know my experience with where I came from, and then what I learned from those, or retrospectively, what I reflect on is, one is know your worth. It's easy when you start a career to just get work piled on you, and years can go flying by to not realizing to where you want to be and where you want to reach to. But I would say loyalty is a two-way street. I do think it should somewhat start with the employer, But I think more common than not in recent years, there's been a high level of people concerned of what's your title, how much money you're making, which is definitely a part of it. And I don't want to necessarily say if that's the most important part to you, that that's not the way it should be. You. But I do think that there are things that institutions provide in terms of benefits and retirement and training and education in the profession that can't be thrown away as well. But if you're not receiving any of those items, then it's kind of like it's not fair for the loyalty to only be thrust one way, where it's like you just have to keep churning out work. But like I said, titles, money, those things, they are constrained by budgets and availability. But like I said, you do have to watch that because, like I said, it is a two-way street. So to me, this one's a tough one to me to share to young professionals, but it's a reality. And that's early decisions and mistakes early on in your career. It can lead to long-term pain. So I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm saying as you start making these decisions in your career, start to think like, hey, if I have to make a move somewhere to where, in a different state or somewhere I've not been, is that decision that I want to make? Do I want to start looking at changing professions, even within research administration? Maybe I want to go pre to post, or I want to go central to departmental. Start thinking about the pros and cons of those earlier, because like I said, years can slip by and you'd be surprised at looking back how much time can be wasted on those early decisions. Complacency can be dangerous. So that's something that I share because for me, could I have stayed at that company? I mean, they're still doing okay. They're still churning on, but for me, it was difficult because they were in a tough area to where they were growing, but not growing fast enough for my education. Like once all of the business licenses and taxes and those things were done, like I was a person that really created processes. So every month, that month closed, the books were done, I paid the bills, done payroll. I'm sitting around. I was jumping in and helping more with the scientific stuff and jumping in the lab. So I'm like, well, I'm just bored. I don't want to just sit here, twist around in my chair. So I didn't want to lose years. And I thought, as I get older, do I want to be doing this 40 and 50 and just sitting here? And it dawned on me that no, I want to do something more. I want to be challenged. And to me, research administration really provides that. It's always changing. As you all know, being in it probably for as long as you have already, the deadlines, they're always coming. But that's something that I like. It's something I enjoy. I enjoy being a service to others, solving problems, keeping the work moving, and really allowing the principal investigators and the students and all of them to achieve great things from the research. Another one, and maybe it's just one for me, I felt like just from my history with my parents growing up, there was a lot of, don't hold yourself back because I feel like they could have done a lot more things in their career where they would have been better off in their life, but they were very risk averse to where I had to look into myself to say, you know what, I shouldn't hold myself back. If this is a better opportunity for myself, it's worth exploring. So don't hold yourself back. Definitely trust in yourself that you can grow and do great things in this profession because I definitely think you can. This is a twist on something I feel like everyone always asks you, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? And I think as an early professional, a lot of times you're like, I don't know where the heck I want to be. And to me, that's okay. You still want to continue to develop that and kind of think about where you want to go. But I think the better question to ask is, where do you not want to be in 3 to 5 years? I think you can answer that. Do you want to still have this title? Do you still want to be making the same amount of money? Is this the work that you really like, or is it really grinding on you day after day? And I think once you start asking yourself those, you'll kind of see where you want to go in your career a little bit easier than just focusing on, the future that may be a little bit more uncertain. But I think, thinking about the things you're not liking, you're not enjoying, you don't want to continue to do this year after year, will definitely point you in the right direction. Another one is take a chance. Too often than not, I feel people don't take a chance. There's opportunities out there. Even at Emory, I see, positions being posted, and I ask people, hey, do you apply? And they go, I should, but nah, I'm not going to. And the thing is, you don't apply, you don't stick it out there. I mean, what's the worst you're going to get is a no. But if you don't put your hat in the ring, people, for one, are not going to know you're interested. You're not going to get that visibility. So I do think you want to get out there and you do want to take a chance. You don't want to overextend yourself because then what happens if you do get a yes and you do get that offer? You don't always want to be sitting there turning them down either, but I think you do want to take a chance. So this kind of gets me on to the next forays. I talked this about a little bit. My girlfriend at the time, my now wife, forayed me into this and said, "Hey, get an application out to UF, see if they're willing to take a chance on you." And they did. They hired me as an entry level research administrator. I had no previous experience outside of doing a Spear 1 submission. I had not worked in higher ed. And I didn't even know what research administration was. Honestly, I was told, "Hey, apply for it." I applied for it, landed it. As you can see here in this picture, a little meme from Office Space, research administrator, what would you say you do here? And you asked me with that when I started, I'd be like, I don't know what it is that I do here. So it really was coming in and humbling myself, starting to learn the profession, build a career, because there was a lot to it. They use PeopleSoft, the financial system. I didn't know that. I had to learn all PeopleSoft. I had to learn all the circulars back then. We were under the circulars, not under uniform guidance. So I had to learn the circulars, kind of learn about different sponsors. So I really had to learn on the fly. And it was a lot to pick up, the financial system, the lingo. So I do definitely commiserate with all of you who are getting into the profession. Like, this is a lot, particularly when you go into an institution, the onboarding, it can just be a lot. And for me, it's always kind of like I picture it as a clock now, and know that there's a lot of cogs, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of stuff's thrown at you at once, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. But hopefully, as you start to go through your research administration career, a year in, 2 years in, all of a sudden, all those cogs start, oh, that's why they talked about this, and this feeds into that, and that's why we do this. So hopefully, it'll all start to get, put together. So learning, like I said, the systems and research in higher ed, it was a lot. So I do commend you all continuing to do that. It takes a lot of work, not just on the job, but outside hours, to keep up and keep pace with that. I'm a big believer in the 4As, as they call it. It's not my thing. I'm not going to take credit for it. And some people might be saying, "Uh-oh, I see appearance on there. He's old school." Yes, I'm a little bit old school. I'm a millennial. I think the term now is geriatric millennial. But I do believe appearance is important. So, a lot of people told me growing up, you kind of dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. And I think that's important. In this profession, we meet with a lot of high-end individuals, PhDs, MDs, a lot of people in the profession. You want to make a good impression, particularly for those of you who are still in the office. I'm luckily not. We're more full remote, but I do go into the office a lot, and I do try to make sure that I look professional. I look put together. Attendance, I think, as you start off, is can never be understated. I think I have a hard time when I get new entry level analysts, and it's just like they're not attending. They don't show up. They're off a lot. They take off a lot. It's hard to learn the profession and get in when you don't have prior experience if you're just not being present. Another one's attitude. To me, is like I can work with anyone who has a good attitude, but I think there's a lot of you who work on different teams. A bad attitude can sink an entire team. So if you've got those things, you look put together, you can show up, and you got a great attitude, I can work with you, and I can definitely show you the profession. And I think most people in the profession would kind of agree with that. Networking and building relationships, particularly in your career, is very important. You're going to be looked at even at the entry level to kind of get work done. It's like you can't get work done if you can't build those relationships to where people will help you, doing journal entries, moving stuffing around, following up on items with the principal investigator, with the study team. Like you got to be able to build those networks, those relationships, know who are the go-to people. I think, as you start to work your way into an institution, you can quickly see who are the people that people huddle around, who are the ones that are getting things done. I don't want to say that the ones that aren't getting things done, but usually you figure that out too. People who are not, people caution you about. So, figure that out, build those networks. We'll talk more about that as we go throughout the presentation at the different level and stages as well. Reliability to me matters. If you can show up, like I said, and you can really, kind of link yourself to the career, be there, I can work with you. But it really is kind of a 50-50 street in building. I can come with my 50%. But you got to come with yours as well. I can't make you want to learn the profession. I can't make you want to jump in and do the different types of things. As long as you show up, I think that, reliability is a really important, area that I think is understated. So to me, what I want you to take from this is that, it's a steep learning curve to get into the profession. It definitely is. And everything that comes along with it. And hopefully this next slide kind of emulates that and kind of talks a little bit more about my history in entry-level research administration as well. I'm a big 80s guy. Like I like Cobra Kai, but I'm a little bit more the original Karate Kid as well. So, this comes from the Karate Kid. Says, first learn to stand, then learn to fly. And I think that's how it is in research administration. Apologize, my butchered Mr. Miyagi, but I didn't create this as well. I took these. These are all over like Facebook and the internet. So I appreciate whoever did actually create these for research administration. But it says, we make sacred pacts. I promise teach you research administration through you. You promise to learn. I say you do, no questions. And that's kind of a little bit how I learned. It was kind of, my first direct report, she was an amazing woman. When I made it higher up, and I was able to get into leadership, I wrote her handwritten letter. And I said, hey, this is because of you. I really appreciate you investing in me and showing me the profession, because that's the way she was. She always taught me, like I hope, and I'll get all teared up here, but she really showed me everything there was to know. And she didn't have a college education. She had started in the profession really early, and she showed me everything I wanted to know. My nickname there in Florida, and they'll probably tell you, if those who still remember, my name was Scoop, because we had the chairs, and I would scoot my chair. She was right in front of me, so I would scoot my cubicle to hers and say, hey, what about this? What about that? And she was the most patient woman. Looking back on it, I can understand how I could be, when you're in the work, it's hard to have someone, but she would always put her stuff down, answer my questions. And sometimes I think my questions startled her, because she was like, well, I don't know why we do that. Why are you asking me that? But those are the things that I wanted to know. I didn't want to know, why we push the button. I want to know, well, what happens if I don't push the button? What happens if I do push the button? What work am I creating if I do or don't do these different types of things? And she really took the time to do all of that. And that's also why I'm here with you all today, because I feel I owe it to the community to pay that back as well. And I think there's a lot of people within the profession who want to do that as well. But a lot of that is how you're going to learn it. A lot of it is on the job, unfortunately, because this profession, it changes constantly. The sponsors change, the requirements change, the terms and conditions change, and it is always hard to get the training, the job aids, the standard operating procedures up to date to what currently is being done in the institution. So I definitely do, commiserate with you guys on your journey, and I'm sure a lot of you are struggling with this. How do I learn it? How can I learn more things? How can I get more involved? But like I said, the community is growing, and the resources to help you all are abundant. Just another slide somebody grown at. Oh, here he goes. Good things come to those who work. I believe it. I mean, I think you've got to put in the work if you want to be great at this profession and you want to rise up. There's a lot to learn. The learning never stops. You got to learn the trade. You got to learn uniform guidance. You got to learn terms and conditions. You got to learn award life cycles, all the acronyms that go along with it. But there's also the job in and of itself. There's the policies, there's the procedures, financial system, all the analytics dashboards that you got to do. So it really is a lot to take in coming into the profession. But I think, as we can all see, that's why it's growing. Believe it or not, it's a college major now, research administration in some colleges, and it's growing. And the profession's not slowing down for us. When I started at Emory, we were around a $500 million a year institution. We're over $1 billion now. So we've, grown substantially from even my time, with the institution. But I also learned, like many of you may be like me, and I actually have a cube on my desk, probably can't see it, but it says perfectionist on it. But that's the way I was. I always was, do this task to full completion, get it done, move on to the next one. Dot every T, or cross every T, dot every I. And it was hard for me in research administration, because I learned I couldn't just do it that way. I had to put certain things down, pick other things up. I had to learn how to balance things and steal time. I couldn't just focus on just doing invoicing, because then my reporting was stacking up. I couldn't just do reporting, because then my closeouts were stacking up. So it's a real recipe for heartburn. So do realize that being a perfectionist in this profession is very hard. I'm not saying you can't do good work and you can't be thorough and you can't be detail oriented. Those are all things that are, amazing, and things you need, and I feel like are things that are harder to teach. But if you have those things, I think you'll go a long way. But you do want, in my opinion, embrace the progress over perfection. So you're getting things done, you're moving things out the door. You have to take pride in the small victories, or you can get burned out in this profession real quick. This is one that I wish that I could say that I did early in my profession, but I really did not. I hung on to a lot of things, and I got a lot of stress, and I got a lot of heartache from it. And it's embracing this mentality of this too shall pass. It's not the end of the world. I'll be the first to kind of tell you this is a job, it is a profession. You do have families, you do have lives outside of this. So make sure you're looking at that and don't get too caught up in any one thing. You're going to make mistakes. You might botch an invoice. You might botch a report. Heck, you might not get promoted. You might get passed over. But those things will fade over time. So don't let them boil up and really, ruin your days and ruin your nights because, you take it out on others around you. And it's not good. So definitely make sure you're kind of leaving work with work when at all possible. So this is something that a lot of people don't believe I tell people, but believe it or not, I'm still part of the onboarding process of new hires. I generally take a little portion of their training when they come in. At Emory, I did a lot of the onboard training for all research administrators at Florida. I tell them when they start, particularly if they're new to the profession, you're going to say, I'm going to quit. There's likely going to be one day where you're just going to say, I'm done with this. And that happens. And it happened to me. I remember they were talking about cost share and this. I'm like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. So I was like, I'm going to quit, but I would say take those bad days, take that anxiety, sit on it, sleep on it. And it's going to pass. So definitely if you really enjoy your team, you enjoy the work, don't let it just be where it's like, I'm going to quit and leave this job. There are some days where, I may have that now, less so now. Because like I said, I really love my team. I love where I'm at. And I've now learned how to kind of balance those things, balance the deadlines, balance the pressure, balance the politics, because you're always going to miss deadlines. It's unfortunate. It happens. It's just like, how can we get it, out as quick as we can, get us back on track. Like I said, it's a pressure cooker. I don't want to say just Central Post Award. I will say I've always been Central Post Award, so I'm biased to that. I'm not going to apologize for that. But pre-award too. I mean, there's tight deadlines there. If that thing doesn't go out, we're not getting funded. So there's a lot of pressure within the profession, and there's politics. I think some people put a little too much in that. They say higher ed, there's a lot of politics. There's been politics at every job I've been in. I've done retail, I've done construction, believe it or not. And they all have their own different pecking levels. So there's going to be changes in leadership. There's going to be changes in direction. And you got to be cognizant of those things as well. I think I'm surprised to see when people don't take the basics of those. I remember when we were in office many years ago, there was an individual, people walking by and like, who is that? I'm like, that's the president of the university. You not know that? Like, you should probably look at the org chart, kind of look at some of the pictures, make sure the high players, you know who they are, those different types of things. So that's kind of what I learned from that side of the section. And taking initiative, in my opinion, is the key to long-term success. No one's always going to prod you along the way and get you to want to do more, to be more involved. But as you all know, in research administration, the work doesn't stop. The deadlines don't stop. So, leadership needs help. They're looking for people who want to stand up, do more, take ownership, take accountability of things. So I definitely think if you want to succeed long-term in this profession, that's the way to do it. So as an entry-level analyst, what did I learn? To me, there's three kinds of people in this profession. Two of them you don't want to be, one you do want to be. We probably all know these different types of people from our daily run-ins, maybe not just the research administration, maybe just in daily life. And that's the people that kind of watch things happen. It's like, oh, there went that deadline. I call those people kind of not my job. It's not my job. Why should I tell anybody or make sure we kind of get this done? Because that's not what I do. So to me, you don't want to be that person. You don't want to just sit back and idly let things happen around you. You want to be involved. You want to make sure you stay cognizant of what's happening. The next one is a harder one to grasp. It's the people who just wonder what the heck happened. So it's like things happen, things fall apart, and they're totally oblivious or unaware of how that occurred. So we don't want to do that either. You definitely want to make sure you stay engaged. You're working with your direct reports, you're working with your manager to keep them involved and not really spinning your wheels as soon as you kind of don't know what you're doing. I think I had times that as an entry-level analyst where I was just kind of sitting there, just killing myself trying to figure out something. And I should have just reached out and said, hey, how do I do this? So, be humble. If you don't know it, get to somebody, let them kind of get you back on the right track. But what we want to be is we want to be the person who makes things happen. That's where we want to be. Like I said, we don't want to be the first two. Let's make things happen. But what actual life lessons that I learned as an entry-level analyst? Never stop learning. To me, You want to learn things, but you also want to share them with others. I think as you're coming entry level, there's a lot of people who are coming into the profession. There's a lot of new people transferring around post pandemic. There's a lot of people who've been moving careers. So link up with those people, partner with those people, show them how the things work at the institution. And you'll find that you can get a lot of trade-offs on kind of, their best practices on what they're doing. And it may not even be work related, maybe how they do their outlook and maybe how they do their, to-do list, and different things like that. And that's where I really feel like I've gained my way of doing things in the profession is, I don't want to say stole stuff, but, creatively borrowed things where it's like I liked what that person did. I didn't like what this person did. I liked kind of how this worked and see how it incorporated to how I do my daily work. But I think you also want to model the way. And what does that mean? To me, that means identifying values, of yourself, things that you're not willing to compromise and break over the course of your career, but also what are the values of the institution? What are the values of the department that you're in? What are the values of your coworkers? And people around you, because I think that is important of learning, what I call it family, because to me it is a family, what family you're joining, kind of being part of. And then you want to set the example. Hopefully, the institution you belong to, mirrors your values and things, and it's pretty easy to set the example. But if not, you can set the example for them of what you want to do and be the beacon of change that you want within that institution. You talked about earlier, you want to become a good communicator and a good connector, and kind of be able to reach out, get to people. You want to continue to build that professional network, start to get into the next level, learning managers in other areas. At least for me, centrally, it's like I needed to know who I could rely on in office sponsor programs, who I could rely on in procurement, AP, other areas that could help me get things done. Yeah, I don't necessarily think you've got to be a great public speaker, but I think particularly if you want to move up, you want to get into leadership, and everyone's a leader, so I do believe in that. But I'm talking more leadership. If you want to have direct reports and people underneath you, it's important that you can publicly speak and kind of get in front of people, share a presentation, do those things when you need to do it. So if you're weak on that and you don't like to do it, believe it or not, I'm not the one who loves it. My team will probably tell you that's bull. He talks funny. He probably loves having 90 minutes with you guys where he can talk uninterrupted, which is somewhat true. But like I said, it's not something that comes 100% natural to me as well either. But I do think you want to build those skills. I put on here give and receive. What does that mean? I think, in order to kind of move things, you don't want to be a person who just gives and gives, because unfortunately those are the individuals who get taken advantage of in the institution. They're always coming to you all the answers, all deadlines are sliding to you. It's always give. So it should be give and receive. And I had a way of building great rapport with that, particularly individuals in the department that we had to work with. Saying, hey, I need help here, nudging them, saying, hey, I'm not going to throw you under the bus. Don't throw me under the bus. But there's times where I need something done. I need you to get it to me. But it's the same thing. You meet my commitments. If they need something from me, I get it to them. I try to be responsible and courteous and professional. They do the same to me in return. It really built a Rolodex of people that could trust, to where they would say, hey, Brian's the go-to guy. He'll help you. But at the same time, when I need help and I need answers, people wonder, how is Brian able to get things done? That's the reason why, because they know when I reach out, it's the same thing. I need help. I'm moving things along, and people are willing to do. So you want to be able to give and receive. So you talk about keep your commitments. It's really boils down to being humble, being reliable, and being you. Particularly early level, I see people come in to the profession sometimes not humble. You do want to do that, particularly if you don't know anything about the profession or the systems or those things. Soak up as much as you can. Be reliable, be you, but don't try to just emulate somebody else, or do something that you see is always working there. You're going to have to work to your strengths and who you are. So nothing to say, like I said, you can't creatively borrow from people, but you're not whoever it is that you're kind of looking at, and seeing them in a higher level. So my next picture I like to have up here, talking about analysts to senior analysts from Meet the Parents. That's what, to me, when institutions involved, they kind of welcome into that quote unquote circle of trust. It's like, welcome to the team. Now we understand you. You know what you're doing. You kind of got your feet wet. You're kind of getting things done. Where should you progress from there? To me, like I said earlier, you really want to learn not just the how, but the why. And that's where, to me, you can be really successful and help the institutions grow. Is, why is it that we're doing these different types of things? And then it kind of backs into how are we doing it? And that'll go into processes and workflows as we kind of go down. But I do say, the only bad question is the one that's not asked, and I do feel like a lot of times it's still a little bit of a danger period when people go from an entry level to a senior, because then they feel like, well, I got that senior title, so I can't ask about this, or I should already know this. And I get that. That may not be wrong, but it's like, to me, ask me. If you don't know how to do it, don't sit there and fumble your way through it or create more mistakes or issues or rework for other individuals. Ask me that question. We can go back through it, but like I said, put in the work. So once we kind of go over it, expect you to kind of know it and kind of move forward from that. But you definitely do want to ask all the questions you can and continue this, because I think, the danger from going to an analyst to a senior analyst, a lot of times there's not a whole lot of change. It's just a lot more volume, and it's a lot more complexity. So you're getting harder awards to manage, that have a lot more administrative burden attached to them in terms of backup, and really monitoring them closely. But as you kind of go from analyst to senior analyst, I feel like you've got a unique perspective that a lot of institutions want. They want to know, how is your onboarding? How did it go? Where are areas that you're struggling? Because a lot of times, even me now at the director level, I'm divorced from some of those daily work items. I quote unquote remember how it used to be, but is it still functioning efficiently? Are we, the things that we're doing, does it still work, or has there been process changes that we need to reevaluate? So as I put it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's more than a movie. It's one of my favorites, but that I think you get exposed to that wherever you are. You see the things that are working well, you see the things that are not working well, and you see the things that are just straight up broken, or missing. And those are what the leadership needs feedback on, to kind of fix those items. So seek out improvements, seek out where there's redundant approvals, where are we doing things that we really don't need to be doing. And I think sometimes that question is never asked. You'd be surprised the amount of times where someone maybe bring something to me and say, hey, Brian, why do we do that? And it's like, because we've always kind of done it that way. And somebody will tell me, well, this is, it causes these issues. And it's like, well, I didn't know that. So we can always look at and reevaluate those processes. A big one to me, becoming a senior, is doing your homework, though. That's where I can kind of really see the level of a senior, engage where they're going and their growth is, they don't just come with problems, they also come with solutions or ideas. They say, hey, Brian, this award's broken, but this is, my thoughts on what I should do about it. What are yours? And then I can kind of do a lot of different things. I can assess, okay, they understand the problem. They may be coming up with a good or bad idea, and I'm glad that they reflected it by me, because I can let them know straight up, this idea is not going to work. Already been down that road. Don't try that with this particular sponsor. But a lot I try to do, a lot of time on my side, I let them know this is how Brian would do it. But if they have an alternative idea, I can let them know you can do it your way. Here's some pros and cons from my way. Here's some pros and cons from your way. But ultimately, you're the one running the portfolio. You decide which way you want to do it. But like I said, I think too often people come with problems. We all know those people who come to the meetings and all they want to do is poo-poo everything down. It's like, well, okay, this doesn't work. What's the alternative? This process is broken. Do you have an idea how to fix it? And continue to build those professional working relationships. I used to say friendly relationships, but then I kind of thought back and said, well, you don't need to be a friend with everyone at work. We know there are those individuals you can't get along with, but I think you do have to build a working professional relationship with everyone. Particularly at this level, to me, it's bumpy, because if you move up, likely you're talking to people who are also going to move up. So I find it interesting that people believe, well, I don't have to deal with this person because they're only at this level. It's like, well, what happens when that person gets promoted above you, or you get promoted and they get promoted at the same time? It's like, now you're both managers, but now you both don't want to get anything done because you can't have a professional relationship. So I've also prided myself on always working with people, trying to be professional, kind of get things done. I think this is also a time where many institutions are looking to see if you can be trusted. Are you going to cut down on workplace gossip, or are you someone who's just going to quote unquote stir the pot and create more problems for people? A lot of times managers will confide in those senior level, analysts with certain things. And if things get leaked out, guess what? They know instantly who leaked it out. So, if you want to get up in more leadership, you will be exposed to more areas of the institution, how it works, maybe process changes or personnel changes. Everyone's supposed to be confidential, but we know how it is. Sometimes it gets leaked out, but it's like, can you manage that confidentiality and keep it to yourself? You want to continue, to me, at this time, to really start building on your strengths. I think too often people say focus on your weakness. I say double down, continue to work on your strengths, because that's what got you to where you are, and it's what it's going to continue to get you above. But you got to fill in your gaps. So you do got to look to see, if I'm new to the profession, do I have a CRA? Do I have, a pre-award or post-award financial certification? Because back when I started, I think you had to go all the way to Texas at the time when I was in Florida to take it. It was only playing, and everyone was like, "Yeah, CRA, that won't take off. No one cares about that." But it's big now, and many institutions are starting to require it to get into the profession. So if you're not looking to get it, I do think it is a great thing to get. It does show that you have well-rounded skills. I'm a little biased. I do feel like the CRA is still kind of the best one because it's a little bit versatile. If you want to do pre or post, it kind of shows that you're well-rounded versus just getting a financial. And then what happens if you want to go to pre, or if you got a pre and you want to go to post? Um, but also graduate education. As you can see from my slide, I don't hide it. I don't have an MBA for where I got, and have I thought about going back to get it? For sure, I definitely am thinking about, if I want to continue to climb the corporate ladder, will it necessarily be, to have an MBA? Or would you see a lot of people in this profession, particularly in leadership, they have MPH or PhD or some sort of graduate level education? And I think eventually, as you get to a certain part of the area, if you want to get to vice president, president, controller, those things, those different types of graduate education, they are important. So you do have to look to prioritize those if you don't have those already. But I don't think it's the only end all be all, but you do got to know, okay, well, I want to go for an AD level position. I want to go for a director level position, but I don't have graduate level education. It will be held against you. I don't think so, but it's something you don't have in your cap to go back to. So it's like, what else do you have? Are you going to build and get a CRA, get more years of experience, get to collaborative groups like, NCURA, build your name that way. I think you just want to be smart about how you're building your career. So as I listed here, professional organizations that kind of do research administration, NCURA, which you all are already smart, you're already here. So that's one of them. SRA is another one that's bubbling up. We're starting to do more work with them here at Emory. COGR, RAC, they're kind of offshoots. There's, RAC's the one that does the CRA certification. COGR kind of, does governmental relations. So some of those are a little bit harder to get at if you're at a lower level. But I think there are a lot of professional organizations that you can kind of join and build that way. So what did I learn as I quote unquote moved on up to senior? I think this is a good time to talk about knowing your limits. Hopefully maybe you've done it and smarter than me. You did it earlier than that. But it's only going to get tougher the more you go up the ladder. So you really want to make sure you're starting to set your personal boundaries. You're figuring out how work life goes. I always tell my staff I'm not always the best emulator of this. I've tried a lot to do better at it. But the pandemic showed me that a lot as well. Having a young one at home, no daycare, having to do that, balance work and try to teach at the same time and deal with them. It tested the work-life boundaries and figuring those different things out. But I remember as I was doing more and more work, I stopped working out. I was putting in late hours, and it was all bad. I shouldn't have done those things. So get back to a normal routine, make sure you're taking care of your personal health, making sure you're not working every single, night, weekend. There will be times likely where you'll have to do it, particularly if you want to, I wish I could sit here and say, you're not going to have to put in the extra hours, but even doing this presentation for you all now, did I have to do this after hours and do it? Yeah. But I like doing it. It was rewarding, but I found a way to do it to where it was on my terms, not necessarily forced on somebody else's terms. The other items here are embrace change. This is something, again, I wish I could say that I was great, and I did as I moved up into a senior and getting increased workload and portfolio. I was kind of seen as a fixer when I was there at Florida, and my portfolio kept getting rotated. So I cleaned it up, and then it's like, oh, here, rotate, about every year. Here's another one, now here's your new portfolio. Clean this one up, Ryan. And I cursed it out. I went to my boss. I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know why I have to continue to do it. But now in my career, I same thing. I same letter I wrote. I said, thank you. Because what you did, and I didn't appreciate at the time, is you exposed me to more sponsors, more difficult awards, cleanup. And, how was I able to now get to the way I was able to do now? It's because I've had to be forced to problem solve those things, figure out how to figure out and correct these balance sheets, how to get the sponsor back online and, trusting us again. But if I just kept, put my feet up with an easy portfolio, likely I wouldn't have been able to do that. So embrace leadership, embrace stepping up when it's being asked. As number 3 says, increase your visibility and exposure. You definitely want to get out there more. There's a lot of times where people are looking for volunteers to help with different rollouts, different, committees or working groups. You want to be able to get in there. I'm not saying, say, put your hand up and do every single one, burn yourself out. You don't want to do that either. But like I said, make sure you're getting some visibility out there and, mixing it up. But to me, a big one that I find, this is more from a leader perspective, than when I was a senior. But it's frustrations that I can see at the senior level is take things to the finish line. I see so often where seniors get it so far, and I think it's growing pains as well, figuring out the line. How far should I go? Do I need my manager's approval to do this? Should I keep them in the loop on this? But a lot of times it's just making sure that good work you did made it. You got the invoice out. Did it get paid? Well, I don't know. It's like, it was important. It was a high level. Getting the invoice is great, but we got to make sure we got paid. So just making sure that we take everything across the line that we kind of is tasked to do, and make sure we kind of cross off our list fully, and just don't leave it hanging. I also think that comes to building relationships too. So often it's like, hey, this isn't my job. Maybe it's not, but it's like, did you hand it off to somebody who could, particularly if it's a PI and they ask you a question? It's like, well, I don't know this, but my cohort here does. But what I found also gave me a foot up is I would always follow back up with that PI. And it's easy. Just set an email reminder, follow back. Hey, I hand you off to this person. Were you able to get the answer that you wanted? And you'd be surprised how often, either way, they're like, yes, I did. I very much appreciate it. And then they would always come back and trust me with, reaching out to me again. Or if they didn't, they're like, hey, thank God you did, because it's not. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, because it also makes our office look better, that things are not continuing to escalate, to where it's like, this person handed me off this person, and I just still didn't get any answers. So like I said, take it across the finish line. You definitely want to do that. Number 5 is a little bit more of a jokey one, but it's kind of, I thought I had a lot of work before when I was an entry level analyst. So like I said, when you're a senior analyst, lead analyst, 2, 3, 5, whatever they call it at your institution, it's tough. I really do thank each and every one of you for the work that you guys are putting in, because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of volume out there, and institutions only want to increase the work that they're piling in. So you're gonna definitely have to figure out how to prioritize, how to balance, or as I tell my staff, you got to steal time. You're always running behind. Deadlines are always there. You got to figure out what is truly a priority. Is this invoice for $10 the priority, or this invoice for $10,000 the priority? Is this one with the PI who only has one award, or this PI who's like, well known in the institution and drives everything the most priority? You got to figure out how to move those things around and get everything done. Obviously, everything is important, which we'll kind of talk about how we can deal with that as well. There's a book that I'll talk about that kind of mentions that and how to deal with that as well as we go through. But those are some of the experiences I had here. So now we kind of move to part, 4, one of my favorite areas, senior to manager. And that, when I became a manager, it was a little bit of a different style at Florida. I was quote unquote team lead. So what does that mean? I kind of had the title without the money. But it was great. I took it because it allowed me to have the rec reports. It allowed me to kind of figure that out. But it was like that. So for those of you who are Star Wars fans, got a little thing here for you. Those of you who are not, I understand the newer movies are a little rough. But this is the area where Darth Vader is fighting Obi-Wan, who taught him. And he said, when I left you, it's about the learner, but the rest of that was now I'm the master. So that's the way it was. I thought I would come in my life service, cut people down. Now I'm the boss. But it is a struggle to actually direct, report, and manage people. Being peer to manager, as I put here, you're peer today and your boss tomorrow. That's a definite tough one to manage. And coming up internally at an institution, because your colleagues and your friends, I still think they're definitely your colleagues and your friends, but it changes things when all of a sudden they now directly report to you. So there will be awkwardness there. There's going to be a transition. There may be some resentment that you're going to have to hopefully work through and get over with that individual. But I think you've got to start addressing those things early. And I think I did a pretty good job of it in my career. But it was tough to get over that. Luckily for me, I got most of the newer staff. So it was a little bit of an easier transition when I first started. But I know a lot of times institutions, they'll create new titles and not move managers. People will come in and be demoted, and then you have to manage people who've been demoted under you. Those are all tough things to tackle. But to me, if you kind of go through these items, I think a lot of these things will help you as well. So I think as you become a manager, you want to be self-aware. I think too often people think that, as a manager, people only watching you when you're doing the presentations, when you're doing the one-on-ones, when you're doing the meetings, when you're doing high visibility stuff. To me, that's not where it is. The staff are really going to judge you. What do you do when no one's watching? Are you answering their emails when they need when they need help? Are you there when they need you? or are you only there when they're, the bosses, the big bosses around? Are you only there for the big presentations and you're looking to take all the glory? So you definitely want to make sure, because people are always watching. You want to create boundaries, particularly in those areas where you did have a lot of peers, and now all of a sudden you got to let them know, like, hey, I definitely want to still be your friend, but when we're at work, we're at work. When we're off work, that may be something different. So you do want to create those boundaries and set those things, which to me kind of goes into the next item, which is crucial conversations, which I think is a tough thing that I see newer managers struggle with. I do feel like a lot of them fall into one of these two categories. There are some that do it great, but usually they micromanage. And I get that. I was a little bit of that, I think, when I was an early young manager, because I was inflexible. I wanted things done my way. This way was the only way, Brian's way. And I can understand my staff probably hated me for that. But having kids, growing in my profession and kind of growing as a manager, I learned like that's not the way that you kind of should do things. There's multiple ways to kind of get things done. As long as items are getting done, they're fine. You also have to trust the individuals underneath you, particularly at this type of profession. Most institutions require college education. So these are professional individuals you're working with. And if you don't trust them and you've got to check over their shoulder, their work and the deadlines and doing all those things, they're not going to trust you, or they're definitely not going to put out the level of work that they could. They're going to work to the minimum. But also there's the other side where people are afraid to manage. So they're like, well, these are my peers. They do bad behaviors, but it could be one of a couple different things. The institution's always allowed them to kind of do a less than optimal job, but say they do an exceeds job. It's hard to rein them back in. Or, those different types of things of kind of creating that mistrust where it's like, yeah, I'm a boss, but I want to be liked. And I get that, but I think that even as a boss and being liked, if you're not telling them the truth, you're doing them a disservice, because it's going to be hard for them to move up. Even if they transition off your team to another team, they might have a stark reality of just being held up to the normal standard. So I do think you want to start having those crucial conversations with those individuals and letting them know you're not going to micromanage them. You trust them to do your job, but at the same time, you're now in charge. You've got to make sure that we're rowing in the right direction as a team. We're meeting deadlines. We're doing those different types of things. The next one I think is just a reminder for any of you who are already direct managing individuals, is that to me, leadership is a privilege, and I do definitely believe that. And you do have to earn your leadership daily. Every day I get up, I try to do best for my team, best for the institution. So I always ask, people ask me, like, how can I trust you? How can I trust you're going to do what's best? I said, for me, my answers are always easy. I'm going to look after my staff. I'm going to look after my division. I'm going to look after the institution. So my answers are always going to fall in line with those things. Like I said, it comes back to being self-aware. What are you doing when people are looking? For me, it's pretty easy because I'm doing the same things day after day and kind of having those same answers. But you want to continue to build and leverage and cultivate new relationships. What do I mean by that? Is as you're becoming a manager, those relationships you had are likely good, but now you want to start forming relationships with the other managers. So if you're like me, you're in central, you want to start forming, well, who are the managers in the departments? Who are the managers in the other areas that I see? I've got to be able to work with them. I need them to give me candid, honest feedback about my staff when things are bubbling up. It's the same thing. I'm not getting blindsided saying, hey, your staff's not getting this and that done. They can kind of tell me in private, and I can kind of, nudge my team and get those things moving so we all look good. But you want to continue to build and cultivate those relationships. Never be afraid to ask for help and support. I think that's something I didn't do as much as a manager, that I wish I did. You're not alone. There's other managers out there who can help you with certain situations and tell you how to navigate certain things. I definitely think you want to get a mentor, particularly at a higher level. If you're looking at starting as a manager or financial manager, so you want to probably get some people who are ADs, directors, AVPs, to kind of help you and mentor you, to steer you through your career as you could continue to look and grow. The next item is a funny one, but it's not funny, is don't forget about your team. I think people, once they become a manager, and it's natural, you're like, well, what's the next thing? I want to move up. I want to be an AD. I want to be a director. So they're trying to figure out how to get themselves in next, but it's like you're now in charge of a team. So you definitely want to make sure that they're succeeding. You're pushing for their promotion, their success. Grooming and mentoring and training them as well. So that is then the challenge as you kind of transition away from daily work. If you're lucky enough to where you don't have to manage a daily portfolio and you just have leadership tasks, I know it's less and less. But I do think, it is easier when you're kind of just managing the ship, whereas you have to do the daily work as well. But there's pros and cons to that. Like even myself, I like to still, even at director level, get in there, get involved, submit invoices, submit FSRs, those things. Because I don't want to lose my skills on that either. I tell my team, I laugh at them, I still know how to do this job. You guys can't ask me, but I get it. People don't always want to, involve you at a higher level if that's not your direct task anymore. Another one is listen to your gut. And I feel like I did that pretty well going on, but there were times that I caved to pressure to where, maybe we made a hiring decision that I didn't agree with. We maybe push for a process that I wasn't on board with. I'm not saying that, you go against the grain. If that's where it goes and the decision's made at a higher level, you got to back it and support it all the way, particularly at leadership. But at the same time, if they're asking for your feedback and you stay silent on it, you're complacent if that item doesn't kind of work and pan out. It's like that's the time really you need to step up and let them know, hey, there are challenges with this, there's problems with this, there's going to be issues with my staff if we do this. So definitely make sure you listen to your gut, you speak from the heart on that, because I do think it will pay dividends both for you and for your staff. So what I learned as I went from a senior to a manager, being a leader doesn't mean you have to take everything on yourself. You got to start delegating. I think that'll also help you out with micromanagement. You definitely got to make sure you're delegating certain things out that are, routine daily tasks that they should be doing. You got to be able to give yourself more bandwidth to take on leadership items and things that you're a director for. As a manager, what does your AD need you to do? What does your director need you to do? And you can't do that if you're sitting there doing the work of the staff. And we'll talk more about that. Like I said, there's also a book that helps on that as well. I think you got to start focusing on the bigger picture. I think sometimes when you talk bigger picture, people get overwhelmed and they start going crazy. But I sum it down by just saying, can you make things 1% better? And if everyone in the institution thought and concentrated on making things 1% better, things would be a heck of a lot better. But a lot of times I think we think we've got to change this huge process. We got to blow this thing up. We got to do this and that. Whereas smaller changes add up over time as well. So look to see where you can be efficient, make things a little bit better for you and your team. Try to figure out how you can improve communication, transparency with your team goes a long way. Get to know your staff, particularly as you're a new manager. And like I said, even if you were peers, just because you were peers, you may not have been exposed to that individual's level of work. What is it they're actually doing and providing? But this is, some people may not agree with this, but to me, it is one that works better. To me, you got to adapt to their strengths, not your strengths. So you got to look to see where that individual shines and continue to lean on that. Give them projects that they like that will work to their strengths. Not saying that you can't build them up in other areas, but I think if you try to just hone on that and only focus on that, it tends to burn people out. So you definitely want to figure out, what works well with your team, how they work. If your institution does stuff like Berkman, stuff like that, that's always helpful to figure out what they do. Like even myself, I'm a very direct person. I like to be direct to individuals, but my Berkman tells me, my wife knows as well, I like to dole it out, but I don't necessarily like to take it. So it's like, if you want to give me criticism, you better give me a little carrot to go with it. So it is an inverse because it is weird. So it's like, I have to let my manager know that because it's like, he's very direct to people. So you'd expect he wants to be direct back, right? And I do want you to give me that feedback. Tell me how it is. But like I said, I like to have a little cherry on it as well. Say, hey, I need you to work on this, Brian, maybe improve a little bit on this. But, hey, here's the things that I want you to continue. Like that works well with me because it's at least, building me up to where it's not like you're saying I'm a complete failure in all things. But some people don't like it like that. They don't want it sugar-coated. Just come to them, and learning how your staff likes to receive that feedback is very helpful. So like I said, it's okay to acknowledge your mistakes and learn together. So I think that's also an issue with being new managers. They never want to admit when they're wrong. They don't want to admit, when they went the wrong direction. I think, it doubly hurts you when you do that. You do want to let the staff know. I think a lot of times I let them know, this is a mistake on me. It's not on you. I didn't communicate this out properly. That's why we didn't achieve what we kind of needed to achieve here. Let's get back on track, figure out how we can come up with a new solution, a new goal, reevaluate this. So it's okay to do that. Doesn't mean that you're a bad leader to me. It's kind of inverse of that. It means you're a great leader. You want to give consistent feedback that goes both ways, and it's got to be timely. I think that's a real struggle with managers as well. They get stuck in the work. They'd much rather just correct the item and move it on than get back with the staff and take the time to work with the correction. That's tough because it hurts you both ways, where the staff now didn't get that ability to make that correction. So now next time, what the chances are they're going to be able to fix that themselves? They're not. But you did it to kind of get it out the door. So I understand the pressure to do that, but it's like you got to give them constant, consistent feedback and let them know, hey, you dropped the ball here a little bit. This is what we need to do to fix it. Allow them to fix it and get it back. But allow the feedback to go both ways, particularly if you're having regular one-on-ones. I suggest you do that. I think it works well with the staff. I think when you have a newer staff, a newer onboarding, you kind of want to have that probably bi-monthly. Once you have more veteran staff, probably a month's good, touch base. But you also want to make sure those one-on-ones are structured. Kind of what do you exchange, what are the things you need to convey to them, give them time to convey to you. I do think having a written quick summary, not a massive thing, but letting them know this is what we talked about, this is what I need you to work on, is also very helpful as well, because we're, doing so much in, day to day. It's like, what did Brian just tell me he wanted me to do? I don't remember. What did I just agree to? So a lot of times I like to put that in writing. Every time one-on-one, they send them, hey, this is roughly what we talked about. Like I said, it doesn't hurt my feelings if you come back and say, that's not exactly what we talked about. You say, it's like, that's fine. You can answer back and say, this is what we did and this is what you missed. I appreciate that, so I can have my notes reflect it properly. But, that's why I always try to do with my one-on-ones, make sure we come in with an agenda, have it written, share it with them when we're done, to say, this is what we went over, this is what we're kind of going for. So I think that'll help you along the lines of being a manager as well. Lastly, it can't be foregone to kind of say, listen to and always stand by your team. You're representing them. You definitely want to make sure you're listening to their concerns, sharing that up the chain to leadership, and really standing by them. It doesn't mean you condone all the things and actions that they do, but it definitely means that, when things fall apart, as the manager, you should kind of take some moments to that as well, and kind of don't let your team take all the lumps for it as well. Kind of get with them, make sure we kind of train them so they learn from their mistakes. What we can kind of do to progress their learning as well. Same thing, likely, they're at the same level. They're kind of maybe entry level coming up and wanting to be, the next manager behind you as well. Part 5 is kind of moving from manager to more executive leadership. So when you're moving from that manager to more of an associate director or a director, what is it going to take and how are you going to be able to kind of get there? For me, you really want to be able to have ambition to learn, and grow over earn and go. So to me, at this point, it's a bumpy area, because a lot of institutions will want to poach you, or even internally, a lot of people see good managers and they offer up a lot of different types of things. But you then got to decide: do I want to stay here? Do I have more to give? Or do I want to take the title and the money? Like we talked about earlier, I'm not gonna hate on any of y'all. You want to take the title and the money? That's one way to go. But you do want to kind of balance that out. You want to be able to take care of yourself and your team, because I do think individuals forget about that. You kind of just start to then only want to take care of your team. Your team can't be successful if you yourself as the AD or director are falling apart. So definitely make sure you're taking care of your health. Still having a good work-life balance, because your staff will emulate that. You definitely want to, lead with care and passion, because to me, true passion shows through. I know the individuals who really love what they do, and I do think at research administration, I've yet to meet too many people who don't. I think this is an industry that really has great, passionate people in it at all levels. So again, it is something that I love. You don't want to accept just good and bad or good and worse. So I put that on there because there's always people who tell you, this is good, this is bad. This is better, this is, there's something in between of those. So, as you're trying to look at process improvements and do those different types of things, don't let people just dissuade you that this is the right way, this is the wrong way. A lot of times there's an in-between as well. You're going to have setbacks even at the higher level, and that's okay. Again, you want to avoid complacency. I think you have complacency early in your career, and I think you get complacency late in your career. I think you have to remember that the problems, once you get up to higher leadership, aren't going to go away. You're the leader now. You're looked to solve those problems, get workflow moving. And that's where I see a lot of challenges sometimes. Individuals, is because they did well at a analyst level, were then promoted, out of, maybe that's what they asked for, or just that's what the institution needed because they didn't have anything else. And sometimes they struggle because they really don't want to direct manage individuals. And that can be difficult. But if you're really wanting to continue to look out to move up once you're in leadership, you got to take advantage of all the opportunities. There's working groups, there's temporary assignments, people leave, there's special projects, interim positions, just like me. Our AVP left. They were looking for somebody to step in. I even let my team know, I let my fellow ADs know I'm going out for it. You should as well. It won't hurt my feelings, but I'm letting you know as soon as they ask who's stepping up, who wants to do it, I'm saying me. They may not go with it, but I'm going to say me. So like I said, you got to try to get yourself out there. It's one of my added more recently, and I do think as I go further through my career, I wish I could still say I'm a young professional, but I'm talking young professionals. I guess I mean I'm not a young professional anymore. Breaks my heart a little bit, but that's enjoy it because you're one day closer to probably not continue to do this job again. So you really want to enjoy what you're doing, pass what you have down to the rest, like you all are on this presentation. But again, to me, it all starts with you. And once you get up to this level, you got to have confidence in yourself. You want to be yourself, but you got to acknowledge and face your fears. I think once you get higher up, you start to get worried about, do I know everything that I should know? Am I going to be able to do it? And a lot of people call it quote unquote imposter syndrome, but I feel like it's more just lack of self-confidence. But you've been able to get to a certain part, just can think about what you've done, reflect on your personal successes, and I think that'll go a long way. But you do want to control your emotions. It's one that I learned over time during my period as interim AVP. There were times I wish I controlled my emotions better, but it was hard sitting there speaking up for my staff, speaking up for different types of things, getting too passionate about things. But from that, that's not always going to drive decisions. You want to come to things professional, put the facts on the table, and always show a professional demeanor. You want to increase your visibility. You don't want to shy away from high visibility projects, like I said. You use that chance to get in front of more leaders. You want to be more vocal. I know it's more harder in an atmosphere if you're working virtual, but you should be on camera. To me, the tip there is if your boss is on camera or somebody above you is on camera, like you should probably turn your camera on. But I think you guys heard this one a lot and don't always accept it's always been done this way. So I know we're a little bit pressed with time. I do want to leave enough time for Q&A, so I'll get through these items. What I learned as being a director, manager to director is, focus on you. Can't always focus on everyone else around you. Jealousy is a disease. There's always going to be people with higher titles, making more money, maybe in the same title as you. But you also want to defeat your lesser self. And I think you do that as you go throughout the course of your career. You start figuring out, how can I be the best manager? How can I be the best AD? How can I be the best director? It's building on top of those skills, but you're not going to be able to reach that by just emulating somebody else. I thought I had a lot of work before. Now it's the converse of that. It's like I thought I had a lot of meetings before. So now you're going to have even more meetings. Your time's going to get chewed up. So again, you've got to continue to develop great delegation and prioritization, or you're really going to be, up the creek on it. Author up, edit down. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a book on that. Pick your battles. One I hate a little bit, but it is true. You can't butt heads with individuals at a high level who need to get things done, because honestly, you need their, agreement to move things along, particularly at a higher institution. So is it something that you desperately need to push back on them on? And if so, you really just got to learn. It's a lot about change management. I think people are willing to take on things if they know the how and the whys. But it's really, how's it going to impact them? Getting them on board is really going to go a long way for you to be able to get more things done. Speak your truth. That kind of goes into, you're a great leader at that point. You come up, continue to speak for your staff. Speak to what you've learned in the course of your career, particularly if you've been in an institution a long time. You have a lot of institutional knowledge, but I think it's hurting a lot of institutions with people leaving and not having that history of what's been done. But people are looking for your opinion. You definitely want to promote, recognize, and trust in your team. I'm always one to kind of try to do that, because them getting credit, they're not going to be like, well, the division's doing great, but Brian must be a bad leader. Them getting the credit, it's going to trickle down to me. I don't need all the credit. Thank your family and friends, because likely they endured a lot of stress for you to get it to this level, and sacrificed a lot of things for you to kind of get there. So always remember that. Remember, you're not alone, even at this level. Like I said, hopefully you got those mentors, and they continue to be there for you, and you can bounce on things. And honestly, you're probably going to need that help as you go higher up to leverage things when things aren't going well between maybe even partnering institutions. You can go in there and leverage your connections to continue to keep work moving. So in closing, I just wanted to talk about 3 books. We're actually going to do a little bit of a random draw that NCURA is going to help me with. For those who attended today, we're going to give out 4 books. So if you're selected, we'll let you know. I just need to know which book you'd like and your mailing address, and we'll get that out to you. But there are 3 books that I really liked. One's what got you here won't get you there. They talk about focusing on a to-stop list and a to-do list. To me, that was great because to-do lists, you're always going to have those in research administration, but having a to-stop list was very helpful to me to say, hey, I need to stop going to meetings without agendas. What are the things that are preventing me from doing things that I should just stop doing these things? Take positive and negative feedback from a neutral place, especially negative feedback. I know that's difficult because um, it's hard. Like I said, I've gotten feedback when I didn't get promotions for people said, hey, Brian, you don't do X, Y, or Z. And I didn't agree with them. Like, you're crazy. But then when I sat down and I calmed down, I was like, dang it, they got a little bit of a point. Like I said, even if there's a little bit of minute truth in there, you can look at it to say, all right, well, that's their perception. Is there something I can do to kind of change that? Another thing is, as you go higher up in the organization, you got to be careful because your suggestions become perceived as a command. I do try to challenge that with my team. So sometimes I'll take a stance and then I'll switch, to theirs. And they'll say, what? You said this. And I said, I just want to make sure that you guys stood by that stance. I never believed in this stance. I mean, I'm with you guys, but I want you guys to see the con of it. Make sure you guys told me the same thing, that nah, we can't go down that route. This one's a tough one, I think, for people as they become newer into leadership and stop focusing on the show and tell people how smart you are. We've all been in meetings where people start quoting uniform guidance and this and that. It's like once you're at a higher level and everyone's CRAs, you got like, we know uniform guidance. You don't need to quote it to me. Let's get to the meat of the issue. But I get it. It's like people want to go in there and show that you belong in the room. But if you're in the room, believe me, you belong in the room. This is one that my wife does not believe. When she saw us on the slide, she's like, that's BS. But give away all the credit. But it is one that I believe from this book is true. As you're moving up into leadership, you should give away all the credit because your team doesn't get it nearly enough. And you'll get it from higher end leadership as they see that your team's being successful. The last 2 books are the Hot Sauce Principle and another one written by Brandon Smith. Full transparency, he is a professor here at Emory, but these are great books he wrote over COVID. And that's the trust formula, and that really just kind of equates to how people trust and figure out if a leader is trustworthy. The book talks about more about hot sauce and how when everything's a priority, you can't taste anything if you're just eating hot sauce. But it really talks about being authentic, being vulnerable, and what that does is it allows people to kind of trust you. But I think the nuance to his formula is it adds credibility. So we've always had leaders. They can be authentic and they can be vulnerable, but if they don't know what they're doing, it's hard to trust them. So I do really love that formula. I took away that from the book, but it does talk a lot of the great things, I think, post pandemic and as institutions are booming that are great, learning about how to prioritize things. That's really what that book does, but it does talk about it from leadership. The other book he has is The Author Editor Dilemma. And what it talks about is the seat dilemma. And as you get into leadership, as I put here, the dilemma is real. So what you should be doing to sum this book down is really you got to author up and edit down. So that means, if you're a manager, you shouldn't be allowing the staff to bring you invoices and now you're correcting the invoices and giving it back to them, because then what is it doing? You're authoring it. They're editing it. Same thing, at my level, I should be, as it puts here, I should be authoring things up to the associate vice president. I should be giving him ideas, taking ownership of those things, and he should be taking them and sitting down and editing them and saying, hey, these are great. This is what I want you to do with this and that. So this book really talks about how you can keep individuals from shifting the seat on you. And I think I said, as you become a new leader, that is something you've got to be careful of, because it's easier. It's easier just to take the work for them, edit it for them, but then the problem is when they make mistakes, who are they going to blame? You're going to say, Brian told me to do that. Brian did that, and they don't grow. So those are 3 great books. I'm not a huge book person, but those are 3 great books that I think I did. And like I said, we'll do a random drawing with individuals who did attend. So from there, we'll get straight into questions and answers. And I have a couple that are pre-canned, but I'd like to do some live ones first before I get into those. I see some claps coming through, so I do appreciate it. I hope this wasn't a total waste of your time, like I said, and then your feedback, if you could let me know. If there's any areas you want me to maybe do a side session on or focus on something in particular, I would love to carve out and do a particular session on a particular area. It's a good question. So the question I'm seeing coming through is, how does remote work impact the abilities to learn and grow? It's tough. So for us, luckily, we had a bit more of an onboarding plan and training and able with us. We use PeopleSoft here at Emory as well. So it was great that I transitioned from PeopleSoft Florida to PeopleSoft Emory. We use it a little bit differently. But we have clone environments to do those testings. But I don't disagree with you, particularly onboarding, training an individual remote versus in office is a lot tougher. So you really got to have a robust training schedule in terms of what it is that you want them to learn, how you're going to do that. For us, what we're struggling with and we're trying to do better is how can we assess what they're learning? How can we do more demos and practices in a clone environment, maybe to let them do some billing, do some different type of, but that, it's double work because now you have to go into a clone environment, create that stuff for them. Somebody has to go back and assess it to see what they did. But I do feel like, kind of, that's always how I've learned best is kind of, you teach me, you show, and then I do. And I think that works very well in research administration, but it is tough. But also talking about visibility, I think it's tough as well. But that's also on the individual. They've got to make sure they stay in front of the community, make sure they're attending those meetings, making sure they're on campus, because it's hard if they're not there and they don't know you, and particularly if you went from on campus to now off campus, the people that were on campus already know each other, so a lot of teams are already together, but it's hard to break into that. But I do think we're working on it. I definitely think the tools are going better, but it's kind of leveraging Zoom, if that's what you use, or Teams, doing a lot of shadowing, working off each other's screens. I think things are getting better for that. Second question. Hopefully that answers the first question. Tips for delegating if you struggle with that. It's a good question. I mean, I guess to my sense, I assume that you're kind of a manager at that point. You're trying to delegate tasks out. I think people struggle with is they kind of don't, they leave things ambiguous, and you don't want to do that. You're delegating stuff out. You got to kind of let them know this is on you now, what the expectation, what the timeline is. As it says, it's like you want to then be the author. You're letting them be the author. You're editing, but if you're not taking that seat, that's always going to go back and forth. So you've got to make sure you kind of give that consistent feedback. Let them know what it is that you're delegating them out to take them, but give them chances to kind of succeed at that. Don't always look to jump in. I think definitely as a new manager, you're always looking to jump in and say they can't handle that, or they can't do that. But at the same time, they might not be able to. So having that regular meetups with them to see how they're progressing on things that are being delegated out helps. If you're delegating things out to like more of a broader group, which we have done that as well, is kind of a little bit longer of a conversation as an organization. I think you've got to effective date that change, make sure everyone understands, hey, this used to be here and now it's here. Same thing, setting good SOPs, standard operating procedures around those different types of things, making sure they have job aids, training before you look to shift things, is always a good thing. I'm sorry that I'm kind of rushing, but I know 3:30 is unfortunately all the time I have with you all, so I'm trying to get through as many questions as I can. Third question is, how long should you consider staying in your position before considering to move up? That's kind of a personal question. So like I said, it kind of is where you want to go. Where are you starting at? So I'll just say at the beginning, you're staying, you're going from entry level, you're moving up. I think I would be looking for an entry level analyst to move up to more of a senior analyst, probably within the first anywhere from year to 2 or 3 years. It's where you're really kind of looking at, and hopefully they have a good grasp. But it's going to change on the individual because maybe they have some prior experience, or they're really good. They know the system, but they just need to know the policies and procedures, or they've been in research, but they need to know how the institution does it and the financial system. But then from there, it's kind of where do you want to go? I have plenty of more upper level analysts who they don't want to manage. So I don't want to say they're capped out, but then they got to figure out what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with being the best lead or senior analyst you can be. But you got to figure out how you're going to leverage that, maybe necessarily for more money, or what you're looking to do with the title. But if you're looking at moving forward into leadership, I think you've got to have those discussions with your direct reports consistently. Because you'd be surprised how often people want to move up and they don't tell anyone that they want to move up. Because to me, it's a different training. If you want to go into leadership, as in managing direct people, then I've got to get you exposed to different things. I've got to get you into different trainings that are offered. Those different types of things to kind of move up. But I also think a lot of times, like I said, it goes back to that jealousy thing. I see a lot of people, my friend moved up, or I've been here the same amount of time as this individual, and they're here. And it's like, well, you're not them though. But it's also the same thing. If you want to move up, like I said earlier, have you taken those things? Are you applying for those positions? Do you have backing for it? Do you have the visibility? Because what I struggle with, everyone wants a promotion, but then when you ask them what they did to get it, it's like, well, I did my job, I do my work, and said, well, that's a meets. I'm not saying you can't do a better than average job at what your deadlines and stuff like that. But if you want a promotion, like, what are you doing to get promoted? You want to get more visibility. You want to already be in the running for a position before it gets posted. I find too often people, once something's posted now, like, what can I do to get it? It's like, well, if you got to be asking me that, it may not be the right time to move up yet. You've got to already kind of be leveraging for that as you're kind of getting along that way. And hopefully, like I said, you've got mentors, people helping you how to do those things. And I always tell my staff, you want to move up, I want to retain you here first. I'll do everything I can to do that. If not, I want you to stay at Emory. If you can't do that, my job as a director is also to support you in your career. I want to get you to where you want to be. So do let me have that. Not everyone is always open and candid as that, but I think, that's where I am. Fourth question is tips to be a better presenter and better speaker. That's a tough one because, like I said, I don't know how you guys thought I did, but I don't think I'm the best speaker or presenter. I enjoy doing it. I think for me, the easiest part is just think like you're having a conversation with your friends, your family, people you like. Don't get too racked up and nervous on the things. It's just a conversation. You're just having it with a lot more people and a lot more broader because you do want to look relaxed. You do want to be able to come through it. And another big issue is you got to become prepared. I think a lot of times people don't come prepared. So that's tough. It's tough to be a speaker and do those things when you're not prepared because then you're already got that anxiety. So you do want to come in it. And I do think people here at NCURA, like I said, they make it easier for me to do this presentation. So I just got to stand up here and kind of hit the button. Fifth question. This one's a tough one. Ooh, this is a long one. So how do you deal with toxic work culture? Both one's creating that culture. So you want to change culture. You want to become a director, create a better work environment. If I heard you first, you want to be promoted, fit into that culture. So they can trust you. I think I get more or less the situation kind of asking, saying, well, hey, you kind of said, move up through a culture, but what happens if it's a bad culture? How am I going to change? And that's tough. It is tough. I think you got to have that conversation with why is it that you're staying in a place that has a bad culture and a bad environment? Is it something you can continue to stomach? Who are the individuals that are creating that? I don't hopefully know of any institutions that are doing that are that bad, but like I said, don't put anyone on blast, but maybe it's just one individual and you got to be careful of that because that individual could leave tomorrow. So maybe that'll be a great, atmosphere when that changes out. So do you love your team? Do you love what it is that you're doing? And research administration's boomed up. So like I said, and now a lot of places are offering remote work. Plug Emory does. But are you stuck there? Is it really where you're living and then that is the only institution that has research administration work? I don't think so. So I want to say necessarily you have to look to leverage and lead, but like I said, as in the earlier slides, it's like you got to start having those conversations, decisions for yourself. How much longer am I going to give this? But I do think you can be a beacon of change within the institution to try to change the workforce culture there, but you need support. You're going to need individuals within the team, leaders around you to step up. But obviously, if it's the leaders all there, together creating a toxic work culture and environment, it's tough to do. But I would say if you're happy with the work and you're happy with the institution, there's plenty of other work that you can leverage and move to. If you're central, you can move to departmental, those different types of things. I see NCURA saying they can extend the time for a little bit for Q&A. I do appreciate that because I got a lot coming in. So hopefully that helps you. But, I don't know if maybe that person wants to talk to me more offline about the toxic work culture, but it's a tough one. It really is. And me personally, I would need to know more about that to provide more feedback on it. Sixth question, is it okay if you don't want to be a manager? I feel as I've seen less if I don't want to pursue a higher title. But I don't really want the responsibility of being a manager. I get that totally. And what I tell those individuals is you're the lifeblood of my work. Because if everyone wanted to be a manager, I have a real problem because I don't have that many manager positions open. And it doesn't matter how big we grow or expand or people leave, there's only so many spots for it. But I do think you got to decide for yourself what it is that you want to do. Because if you peak out at a certain level at an institution, as you know, what are they going to do for you? You can probably get the marginal increase if you're looking for salary. Um, but it's ways to figure out how you can kind of, continue to grow in your career as well. I don't want you to get stuck to where, well, I'm just seen as a lead analyst, and unfortunately, the only thing I can do is go into leadership. I think you can leverage to do a lot of different types of things. Like I said, particularly if you're like me and you're central, they're always looking at more people in the departments. They're looking for, more senior individuals in those areas. If you're just looking for a pay increase, um, but I wouldn't take it that way. At least hopefully, if you're in my division, I don't want to see you be treated as lesser, because like I said, those individuals are the ones that really keep the work moving for me. But like I said, you got to be honest with yourself. If you don't want to move into managing people, I did somewhat advise you against doing that, because those are some of the managers that teams struggle the most, in their teams struggle because they're not comfortable with being a manager. They don't want to manage people. But unfortunately, a lot of times once they become a manager, they're stuck. They're like, well, I'm not going to demote myself. I'm not going to take less pay. So it really, and no one's happy in that situation. So it's really tough. But like I said, hopefully you can figure out a way to leverage your career. And I did get some other offline questions that maybe I can get to those, and that may be answering some more of your questions as well as to where you can move within your career within research administration. Seventh question is how to deal with micromanaging peers, tricks. I'm not sure if they're talking about if you're being micromanaged or if you're micromanaging somebody else. I'd say if you're micromanaging somebody else, knock it off. It's not going to do you good, because the individual is not going to trust you. Like I talked about earlier, if you really think you're going to get more out of that individual, they're not going to, because from their point of view, you don't trust them. You don't trust their work. You don't trust their input. So you don't want them to feel that way. And I think as managers, unfortunately, it's not our intention. It's just that we have deadlines and we have pressures and we want to get it out. But you've got to divorce yourself of that a little bit, because even in me, when I became a director, there's a lot of things where it's like, I gotta do this all the way, just daily work. I'm gonna do this. And what it made is I couldn't get to the other things that leadership needed me to do. So there's certain things that I just had to drop on my ADs, and they were great because they let me know, hey, Brian, you need to drop that. Trust us. And guess what? Didn't blow up. It got done. It wasn't perfect, but you gotta extend that trust out for it to be returned. And I'm very surprised in my transition to director. A lot of things I thought like this isn't gonna work. The team's not ready to take this on, but when we thrust it upon them, they did. So I do think that will work in terms of if you're being micromanaged, same thing as those crucial conversations. And I know it's hard, talking to your direct report and being honest with them to let them know you feel like you're being micromanaged, and having a safe work environment where you feel like you can have that conversation. Hopefully you do, but it's trying to figure out with them. I think figuring out where that leader is coming from. Why is it that they're micromanaging my work? Because I think you'll get to the root cause of it and the fear, and likely it's probably missing deadlines. It's probably not having the work done to the level that they think needs to be done. They're going to be blamed for and assessed at a different level. But I do think it does start with the conversation, because if they're not, they might not know they're micromanaging you, honestly, from that. Like I said, so hopefully you have a relationship with your manager where you can have that conversation. Eighth question. I'm currently in a role within my department that does not exist anywhere. So the roles have not been established. I'm not sure of moving up when there's no role to move up to. Do you have experience in developing positions or ladder a new position? Yeah, I do. Because believe it or not, our division changed a lot. So if you look back at my career transitional model, it says I was a financial manager, and then I became an AD. But we didn't have ADs. But then what happened is we got ADs, we got rid of the managers. And then we had a director and we didn't have a director. So, when I took over as interim executive director or a interim AVP, I was able to let leadership know there's a real problem with our org structure. We now have an AVP once you guys refill this position, but we don't have a director, and we have ADs, we have no managers. I need managers restored. So I was really able to work with them and let them know and show them the reasons why. Workloads being choked up. We don't have approvers. We need managers to be restored. But at the same time, you have to have a transitional succession plan. How are you going to have, ADs with no managers? How are you going to have an ADs with no directors? So it was a tough battle, but we were able to get it done over the last year, and I really do praise the institution for seeing the need to make the change. So we were able to create a different leadership structure there. It's where now, in my opinion, it makes great sense. You got an AVP, you got a director, you got ADs, you got managers, and you got analysts at different levels. But it is tougher if there's no tree created, because for us it's just over time certain things, likely for budget and other different things, maybe even positions of what we had available for individuals to fill those roles, things dropped off. But I think sometimes it's having that conversation with them and showing them what you feel that the structure should look like. I think ironing out your roles and responsibilities is very important when you're creating that, but the institutions always want to see, what's in it for them. Why are we creating this structure? What's the different structure change? Why do people want to, why should we support this? So we were able to really show those different types of things. Well, it's like work's not getting done because we only have 2 approvers. Different types of things like that we were able to show, and showing them, looking at the budget, being strategic on how we think we could accomplish it without, creating a ton of angst within our budget, or tacking on a million new FTEs. So that's just honestly just never going to happen at an institution. Hopefully it helps to answer your question. I see one more question, and I'll try to quickly get to the ones that were canned here. Which level of position have you enjoyed the most? What made it most enjoyable other than the money? Well, obviously the money is always great, but to me, like I said, as you move up, in my opinion, the money, I won't say it's not satisfaction in getting the title and the money. Obviously there always is, and getting, confirmation of the hard work that you put in, like I said, the sacrifice that likely your family and your friends, other people have had to make for you, to get there. Which level did I enjoy the most? Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I enjoyed them all for different reasons. But the one I enjoyed the most probably was manager, honestly, because I had my team. I was able to directly do the work still, manage them, see them grow. So I definitely enjoyed that level. And it's hard to say because I haven't been as a acting director for as long, but it's just different. So I had a conversation with that with one of my staff members recently. They talk about something. They say, you must be doing a lot of hard work, and I said, no, you're doing the hard work. I'm just trying to make it so you can get the work done. To where we got into a little bit of a conversation of, well, what's that work like? And I said, it's a lot of work, but it's just different. So it's enjoyable at this level to be able to be trusted. Like I said, leadership is something that is bestowed upon you. You shouldn't take it lightly. But I really do trust that and love that the individuals within my team trust that I should be here and represent them. And one day, I guess maybe when they figure that I'm too old, I can't hack it, maybe I'll naturally step down from there. But I feel like there's a lot I can accomplish with this team, and there's a lot, luckily, that they're allowing me to continue to steer the ship for them. But I do take a lot of weight from that as well, to say it's a big responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. So I get to a couple of canned questions that came in before. They kind of asked, what additional certifications might be an advantage? They put pre-award, but I put it out there in general. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of RAC certifications. The CRA, Certified Research Administrator, they have the Certified Pre-Award and the Certified Financial. To let you guys know, a little plug for them. It's a 3-year term. I think it used to be 5, 3-year now, 42 contact hours you'll have to maintain. Cost $395, $195 to renew, but they do only have testing periods at certain intervals. So, it's all on their website. I won't go through all of it, but, the next one ends, I think, May 10th. That's open from May 11th to the 25th. And the next one after that's October 2nd to sign up for November 2nd through 16th. So if you're looking at doing CRA, there's a lot of study groups. Emory participates part of the study groups. That's a big help with a lot of people across a lot of different institutions doing that, studying up for the exam. I do think that certification is becoming very big in this profession. So I'm a big believer behind it. But Society of Research Administrators, International SRA, they have a lot of different certifications, which I've not tried, which I'll probably start to do because our institution is looking at that. But they have a lot of different modules, pre, post, compliance, different types of areas. But I think don't sleep on the graduate level education. Those of you who already have it, kudos to you. I know it's a lot of additional work to put in. But MBAs, we have a lot of individuals, particularly since we're more finance driven post award. Got CPAs, MPH. Like I said, a lot of the high end leaders in research have MPHs. If you're looking at pre-award specifically, because that's what this question had, there are a lot of people who go in the legal route because they want to get into licensing, contracting, and those types of things. So that's another area that you can look to do. Another question we got in was, can you share your insights on different career paths? Sure. I mean, to me, I broke it down as kind of, in my opinion, there's kind of central, departmental, pre-award compliance, a lot of areas. So, central, that's like me, contracts and grants. There's finance. Usually there's a finance component that may you do deposits, the procurement, it varies per institution. Just clinical trials, which to me is a whole another beast. Clap for all you do clinical trials. Like I said, I'm not a master at that. It's a totally different realm in terms of sponsor program, research management. You got IT security, which is becoming big. Also, there's a big area where I think people are sleeping on, but I see it growing and it's a great one. And this is training, having training offices, individuals able to support training centrally at institutions is big. Departmental, obviously the schools have a lot of their own side skirts of these. So a lot of times there's repeat offices of contract grants people, financial people, but you got project managers, you got coordinators, you got business managers. There's a lot of opportunities with individual departments or schools. Pre-award, obviously you have my favorite people, our secondhand, office sponsor programs. A lot of times you have tech transfer, licensing, patents, offices. Compliance, you have your human and animal subject, your ICOC, IRB offices. A lot of times you have internal audit, research compliance, health, environmental safety. There's so many different offshoots you can go in research, and that's why to me it's so crazy that this profession is not as more broadly known and how big it is and how much money it brings in. But another area which I think that a lot of people don't think about, which to me is blown up since I started in research administration, is consulting. And you probably have all seen it out there. You got Attain, you got Huron, all these other areas like Cayuse, all these different areas. And where you think they're looking for a lot of talent in those areas. They're looking for people who've done it, who've done the work, who can go there and other institutions can leverage their knowledge. And I do see a lot of individuals who've been in research a long time, starting in their career to skylight out of higher ed and then go the consulting route. So it is something that we're seeing. I know NCURA is paying attention to it as well, is how much that division's blowing up. And the last question I had here, unless any more come in, were, can you recommend how to build strong professional relationships in the field? Again, I break that down. To me, I would first start at home. What are you doing at your institution where you currently are? What do they offer? Because a lot of times they offer learning and development courses, those different types of things. I think you want to start there because a lot of times those are cohorts. Use that time to learn who are the other peers around you. For us, like, who are people in the provost office or, in alumni affairs, build those relationships because those people move up. You never know where you might need a friend or you never know where you might need, get a new job. So that's one area. Creating mentorships. Like I said, I can't mentor you all on this call. There's a lot of you, but if you're looking for people to reach out to, I think there's so many people who want to be so helpful in this career. So build mentorships, build people you can trust. Don't sleep on your direct reports too. Like, who's your direct manager? Who are their managers? Obviously for me, I've got my AVP, got my VP of research. Learning them, leaning in on them. But for them, using these opportunities in NCURA, for us, we've got a grant, which for us starts for Georgia, Research Administrator Network. So there's that. We have for those individuals in Georgia, all the different conferences that NCURA offers. I know travel is sometimes hard for other institutions, but being able to do, spring, national convention, FRA, PRA, even the virtual offerings. Meeting people, doing that, reaching out, volunteering if you're a part of those or attending those are always great ways to meet new people, get yourself out. And lastly, I would say don't sleep on just general opportunities. I see all the time where there's meet the PI, fundraiser type stuff. They're building a new building. or staff celebration, someone's retiring or doing all these different types of things. And people, a lot of times, they don't go to those things. I can't go to them all either. I did do my best, especially now we're a bit more remote. But those are opportunities to go and meet individuals, meet high profile PIs, meet division heads, get your face seen. So like I said, if you want to promote, like you said, don't, I think you'd be kicking yourself when you don't get it. But if you don't get it, you got to think about, did I leverage everything I possibly could to get myself in the best position to get those positions? And at the end of the day, also, did I even try to go out for them? You're not going to get, promotion if you don't put your name in the hat and actually apply for it. So at this point, I don't see any more questions coming in. I know I'm a little bit over time. With that, I think we can wrap it up, Ronnie.